There you go. Okay, we're all set then, so we'll turn it over to Artis, okay?
Okay. Is everybody ready? Yes. Okay. Mahler's 4 1905 Welty Mignon rolls, renditions of his own music, are the only direct evidence we have of Mahler's performance approach, since he made neither disc nor cylinder recordings as a conductor or pianist. Recorded on a single day, November 6, 1905, for M. Welty and Son in Leipzig, the 4 have value because the Welty Mignon method for performance capture and lack of invasive post-production editing can now be trusted to give a representation of Mahler's actual playing. For several decades, questions have lingered about the authenticity of the piano roll idiom. Could the recording devices actually capture the note field, note timing, and dynamics of the artist as they played, and how do the perforated piano rolls interface with the playback systems installed in acoustic instruments in order to realize the performance? Research addressing these questions is a byproduct of current efforts to transfer performance data encoded into paper piano rolls to the digital domain. Because period documentation of Welty's proprietary method of 1905 is incomplete, and the characteristics of the digital domain itself is a new environment, what is being reconstructed today relies on a great deal of reverse engineering. A number of researchers have developed digital conversions in MIDI format that can play back roll data using simulated piano sounds or acoustic instruments equipped to execute MIDI playback, such as Yamaha's Disclavier or Spirio by Steinway. These digitized renditions can be compared to playback of original rolls on ostensibly well-restored original reproducing pianos. In a previous paper, I explored several competing digital conversion methods applied to piano rolls recorded by Paderewski. I came to see that the work of Dr. Peter Phillips was in the lead in recreating the Welty system. There are the others, Ampico and Duo, but we're dealing with Welty today. His 2017 PhD dissertation, Piano Rolls and Contemporary Player Pianos, the Catalog's Technologies, Archiving, and Accessibility, is currently the seminal publication in the field, and you can read it online. His dissertation documents all surviving contemporaneous evidence of Welty's 1905 recording method. Using these sources plus computer music technology, Phillips describes how live performance data was originally gathered, coded, cut into paper rolls, and reproduced in the Welty playback system. Phillips went further. A large portion of his dissertation is devoted to describing his method for transferring the original performance data encoded into the paper piano rolls to the digital domain. Major. Apart from converting real-time note and note timing to MIDI, Phillips has notably made large strides toward understanding and recreating the more elusive and complex dynamic data encoded into Welty's roll performance. Once Phillips' digitized Welty piano rolls became available in the form of MIDI data, only recently, it became possible to generate print transcriptions. Dr. Phillips generously shared his data with me and Mr. Bill Ooms for research purposes. Bill Ooms, a former vice president and director of research for Motorola, is currently working with music publishers transcribing harp performances to printed scores. Mr. Ooms generously agreed to apply his expertise to begin a Mahler roll transcription process. My presentation today will focus on only one of Mahler's roll performances, his setting of a song entitled, let me skip the German. The English is I Wander Joyfully Through the Green Wood, and that's why I gave you that handout. It has both the German and American. The text and music of this song comes from a collection of German folk poems and songs first published in 1805. This collection, Das Knaben Wunderhorn, was an extremely popular source of idealized 19th century Germanic folk songs, fairy tales, myths, and literature. Mahler's fascination with its collection and his use of it was central to many of his other compositions, including themes to be heard in the second, third, and fourth symphonies. Now, here is the first and most current transcription that you can watch as it plays, as the sound recording plays. That's what it's here, from an authentic reproducing piano from the period. I even need to speak anymore. You hear this, you know? Okay. Generating an entryway print score was the first step. However, after a first pass through Philip's MIDI conversion, it became obvious to Mr. Ooms and me that the performance featured constant and minute timing fluctuations and slight note onset deviations within chords and between the hands. You can hear that already. These inevitable human variations, distinct from the mechanical timing depicted in print scores, are what differentiate performers. Due to the degree of fluctuating performance details and despite the increasing sophistication of current notation programs, Mr. Ooms was required to make many individual notation decisions in order to build a basic score approximating Mahler's intent. To do so, he also consulted with Mahler's piano vocal score published by Schott during the composer's lifetime that corresponded to the role performance. In any event, print scores remain somewhat analogous to a recipe. Directions are provided involving ingredients, their quantity, timing of their blend, and temperature. However, we all know results vary. By analogy, a human performance of what a print score conveys always produces a variety of results, and we expect that. What interests us today is paradoxically not so much what Mahler played, but how he played it, AKA his performance practice. Okay, because this is all we have. As anyone who has worked in MIDI knows, note timing and note length work in tandem with dynamic inflection as captured in velocity numbers. These digital artifacts of performance can be seen quite coldly on a computer screen, but as mentioned above, the degree of detail is so great that no score in standard notation can be expected to fully depict what we hear. Therefore, once a basic score was established, I returned to concepts and analytic tools I developed in my doctoral research. My dissertation was in 2 parts. In part 1, I synthesized guidelines for expressive performance found in 19th century performance treatises. In part 2, I developed a method of oral analysis and an accompanying notation system that took into account these 19th century guidelines as they manifested in performances captured on phonograph disc and cylinder recordings of pianists born before 1900. And let's hope we can get this guy to work. Okay, where am I? Yes. So hopefully, hello.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, these are excerpts from my dissertation, but these are some of these very standard performance practices that were recurring over and over again. You can see these are some of the pianists, and I went measure per measure and marked it, and from there I synthesized the data to come to some conclusions. It's actually quite fascinating. Many of you are probably familiar with 19th century propensity for rolling chords and asynchronicity of the hands, but during my research I discovered considerable reliance on various accentuation techniques that involve dynamics and temporal displacements, and believe me, they all use them, and plentifully. When we listen to Mahler's Welty performance, either through playback on an original reproducing piano or from Philips MIDI data, we hear a performer using the selfsame expressive devices deployed by his pianist contemporary. Okay, so here's just a little preliminary, my preliminary analysis. It's not as detailed as I would go, but you can see how I'm using the little red markings to no, and in some ways it's much better than dealing with all those numbers in MIDI. It's because these are general trends, faster, slower, breaking in the hands. You know, that's I think what you really want to get out of these renditions. Okay. It's fascinating to take apart Mahler's performance in this way, but valuable only insofar as it serves to reveal the underlying rationale driving his profusion of expressive details. The rationale, it turns out, is to be found in the most obvious place of all, the poem itself, and that's why I gave it to you. Mahler interprets this piece from the standpoint of his persona as opera conductor. His rendition projects and underscores the narrative drama of the lyrics. The beauty of MIDI is that you can slow down his performance and see as well as hear note placement, note lengths, and note velocities. For this presentation, I prepared 4 videos that correspond to each of the stanzas of the poem. I've slowed down each segment just enough so that his performance can be perceived more clearly. I know it's a violation of, but for scholarly purposes, fine. I'll precede each video with some general observations regarding how he projects his performance in order to deepen the meaning of both the poem and his musical settings. Now we're going to stanza 1, and I will give the narrative and then you'll see the data. Mahler sets up a vernacular dance premise through dance accentuation. Weak, weak, strong. Up, up, down. You hear it all over. And open fifths in the left hand. The fifths are rolled, but consistently feature an anticipating bass note that suggests a drone bass or percussion. Let's stanza 2. Here the poem commences the narrative trajectory. We hear the ebb and flow of crescendo and accelerando and a lingering retard over when darkness falls. Further along, slow rolled chords underscore when not a soul is in the street. The stanza concludes with a return to the dance rhythm of the opening. This rhythm is maintained through the nightingale figure, which slows to introduce the next stanza. Just so that. Here's 2. Stanza 3. A third-party narrative is introduced who describes what is or will be occurring next. Mahler's performance here is softer, slower, and features long-held sustained pedaling and rolled chords foreshadowing what is to come. We hear slight retards and rubato, well, you'll hear that everywhere, of course, but here it's very pronounced, that amplify the tentative nature of the lyric. Well, are you going to let me in? But the stanza returns to the dance rhythm, impatience perhaps. I've been standing here so long. At the end of the stanza, the nightingale figure spins out over a long-held sustain pedal. Okay, now we come to the heart of the thing. Stanza 4. A not so veiled reference to lovemaking. Of particular interest is the semi-cadenza, the nightingale sang the whole night long, the nightingale, of course, Eros, that suggests the ecstasy and denouement of lovemaking. It is the loudest, most expansive place in the rendition, and here Mahler more fully explores the resonance of, dare I say, the erotic inference of sustained pedal that mixes chord changes together. We now hear open fists in the left hand slowly rolled under an inner melody that spreads and becomes entangled within the nightingale filigree. This place was the most difficult to notate. Once the cadenza concludes, Mahler snaps back to the dance rhythm. Sleepy little maid, take care. The narrator concludes on a sardonic note. Where's your sweetheart now? Chords are not rolled, and there's a clearly defined placed accents being used here. The nightingale figure unwinds in a retard. summary. I want to recap 3 points, one of which this endeavor has resoundingly resolved, and 2 that are in progress. First, in answer to the question of whether or not Mahler's Welty roll performance and Philip's transfer to the digital domain actually reflects Mahler's playing on November 6, 1905, I think the performance analysis provides solid proof, if your ears don't tell you. Mahler's rendition is filled with a complex web of wondrous details that illuminate and deepen our understanding of the music and the text. As it said, an editing crew in the role creating studio could never make this up. It's one person's performance. Second, regarding the nature of the Transcribe score, this still remains a somewhat thorny area and one on which we continue to work. The question is how much performance detail can or should be included. There has to be a cutoff point. Third, and related to the second point, does it make sense to use a separate notation system to document the detailed performance nuances that we hear, such as what I did? I say a provisional yes, but slowing down the data for this purpose, however revelatory, comes with its own set of problems. Again, how much detail can or should be documented, and with that in mind, how do we establish the part human perception plays in absorbing Mahler's expressive performance? Now I'd like to just end with some things that Mahler himself had to say about tempo and more broadly about performance, and this is a direct quote from, all right, quote, "All the most important things, the tempo, the total conception, and the structuring of a work are almost impossible to pin down. For here we are concerned with something living and flowing that can never be the same even twice in succession. That's why metronome markings are inadequate and almost worthless. Therefore, the right relationships of all the sections of the piece are much more important than the initial tempo. Whether the overall tempo is a degree faster or slower often depends on the mood of the conductor. It may well vary slightly without detriment to the work. What matters is that the whole should be alive and within the bounds of this freedom be built up with irrevocable inevitability." And that's what we hear in this performance. End.